Mike Puthoff, Dr. Puthoff, welcome to Tuesdays with Mike. How are you?
I'm doing well, Mike. How are you?
I'm doing great. Hey, I'm looking forward to this conversation. We've had it set up for a little while. You and
Mhm.
I have had some opportunity to work together collaboratively, speaking at combined sections meeting, but I want to dive deeper into your pathway, your current projects, your future passion, and I want to give the listeners and audience an opportunity to hear all that as well. So if you're ready, let's go for it.
Great. I'm excited.
Good deal. Let's start off by just understanding, your journey to become a physical therapist, which
Mhm.
led into administrator and researcher. Mike, take the stage there just a little bit. It's always very powerful for younger students that are considering physical
Mhm.
therapy, especially to know what your pathway has been.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thanks again for having me today. I'm excited to talk with you, Mike. And as you said, we've crossed paths numerous times over the years, so this is great to be together with you today. So thank you.
Yeah.
I've been a physical therapist about 26 years now. Most of my time has been at St. Ambrose University in Davenport, Iowa. I'm a faculty member here, but I've been a faculty member, I've been an assistant director, I've been a director of the department. I served as the dean of graduate studies for some time period, returned back to a director position, and now I'm in a faculty position. So if people think about academia, it gives you a lot of leeway. You have a lot of autonomy in where you take your career and a lot of options to say yes to new opportunities and try new things. So it's been a great journey. When I graduated, I thought I was one of those therapists, thought I wanted to do outpatient orthopedics. I had a great mentor during one of my clinicals, and I wanted to be like David, my CI. But you were a practicing therapist in early 2000, late 1990s, and you remember the Balanced Budget Act, and it was really hard to find jobs. And I took a job in a hospital, and I enjoyed it. It was okay. We moved, my wife and I moved, ended up working half-time skilled care, half-time outpatient. It was a good experience, but wanted more. Son wanted to do a little bit more. And University of Iowa is right up the road from us when we lived in Iowa, and decided I'm going to go get my PhD. And I didn't know much about it, honestly. It turned out really well, but I went into the process very naive. I was there a couple years. The job opened at St. Ambrose, and it fit to my clinical background, my PhD work. The director at St. Ambrose at the time, Sandy Cassidy, she also went through the same PhD program I was in with the same mentor. So there was this nice natural connection. She took a risk on me. I think the department took a risk on me. I was only maybe 6 years out, 5, 6 years out from graduating, not even halfway through my PhD work, but I think it all worked out on both sides for us. Um, Finished up my PhD work, went back to the clinic one day a week. We get that option here and got more experience. And sometimes students say, oh, I have to have 10 years of experience before I go back and get my PhD or something like that. And, that's great. But I decided this is something I wanted to do. I did it and then built on my clinical knowledge after I finished up and had that option there. But that's a little bit how I ended up at St. Ambrose and my path there. And like I said, a lot of different roles here and have learned a lot, have had a chance to start a pro bono clinic here at St. Ambrose. I've served on different task forces across the university and also had this option to get involved in the profession through the different academies and serve in that way too. So it's been a good career and can hope to continue it along.
Mike, 26 years. Let's roll back just a little bit before we roll forward. Okay.
Mhm.
So, two questions that are going to bookend one another. First, why physical therapy for you in the first place? And
Mhm.
then let's move into what your PhD was.
Yeah.
So, let's do both of those.
So I was probably one of those exceptions to the rule. I pretty much knew what I wanted to do at 16 or 17.
Mhm.
My parents were both in healthcare. My dad was a teacher at one point, but moved on to more healthcare administration, things like that. My mom was a nurse, and I knew I wanted to do something medical field focused. And
Mm.
one of them suggested looking at physical therapy, and I did some observation hours and made some connections that way, and really thought this spoke to me, right? You got to work with patients. It was fitness forward. I didn't probably know that term at the time, but I think that's what it appealed to me. You got to spend time with patients. It wasn't med school is something you kind of consider. You look at the years and the time and all that, but PT was appealing to me for those reasons there. So that's really what drew me there. I went to Marquette University. They had a great, and still do a great program where you can get admitted as a high school senior and you have a spot in the graduate program. So I was able to do my undergraduate and my graduate work there and kind of be lined up that way. So that worked out really well and great education there and set me up well. And
Yeah.
then my dissertation work, my advisor, Dave Nielsen, he has that background in more cardiopulmonary background there. He was doing a lot of body comp work, research, some amputee, energy cost type of thing. But he gave me the freedom to do more geriatric focused. And I was excited about strength and muscle power and that relationship to function. And I really wanted to do like a power training type of thing. But
Yeah.
when you do a dissertation, you want to be able to finish it up and graduate, right? So I did more of a cross-sectional type of thing, looking at the relationship of leg strength, leg power, and endurance to function. And we included activity monitors. We used a measure of disability, but also looked at 6-minute walk tests, 5 times sit to stand, gait speed, short physical performance battery. And, the findings were pretty similar to other things in the literature that strength is important. Power might be more important for certain functional activities. Endurance also had some importance too. So I was really excited about muscle power and still am excited about muscle power and that importance of course, speed and also force production. And that's my dissertation. And it's kind of led to some other things that I'm doing right now, honestly.
Yeah. And that's a perfect segue into exactly what I wanted to ask next
Mhm.
is when we look at the published
Mhm.
articles that you've been a part of and have led,
Mhm.
research and otherwise, we see a nice blend of strength, power, assessment, aerobic,
Mhm.
and then a very large umbrella of geriatrics, and always a through line of function in all of that. Mike, take us through just a little bit of your evolution of research passions and
Mhm.
even point us a little bit toward the future of where you see your work and aspirations in the next few years.
Yeah. So, finished up the dissertation and I was excited about strength and power and tried to do some follow-up work along that lines. At St. Ambrose, you're not going to be a NIH researcher, National Institute of Aging research or anything like that. It's really a teaching university, and that's where the focus was at. But definitely still wanted to do research, and there's still that expectation, of course, in our profession. Um, I switched over to looking at more function in cardiac rehab because it matched what I was teaching, and I thought that was really a kind of a missing link. Cardiac rehab at the time, they've gotten better, but at the time, it was a lot of aerobic capacity, aerobic training, not doing strength, not thinking about function. So
Mhm.
I worked with one cardiac rehab center here in town. We looked at grip strength, we looked at 5 times sit to stand, gait speed, and just looked at reliability, minimal detectable change in that population. Worked with another cardiac rehab center in town, looking at more how function changed across cardiac rehab with the ultimate hope of doing a more add-on kind of intervention focused on function for some of their patients. And, we found function improved. We were able to show there were deficits in cardiac rehab. So saying, okay, we need to address this function, not just aerobic capacity.
Yeah.
But when you do clinical research, not always the facilities, not always their top priority. People leave, jobs change, and that kind of dried up a little bit. Honestly, I
Mhm.
wanted to keep doing that, and it just didn't work out from that standpoint. Um,
Mhm.
Shifted into my administrative role as director. And anyone who's been an administrator before knows that your day is not your day. You have the best of plans. You come in and someone knocks on your door, right? Or this issue comes up. And I had to shift a little bit. And being involved in the cardiopulmonary section of the APTA, they were writing a clinical practice guideline. And I volunteered to be involved in that. So I got to help write the first clinical practice guideline on physical therapy management of patients with venous thromboembolism. And definitely a turning point in my career when it comes to research. I got to work with people like Ellen Hilligus and Ethel Fries, people who are big names in cardiopulmonary, and write with them. It was kind of fun. My cardiopulmonary teacher, Dennis Sobush, was part of the writing team. So he was my professor from my PT education, and I got to serve on a task force with him and write with him. And I mean, you know the power of clinical practice guidelines. They can really guide therapists. They can stimulate conversations. They don't answer all the questions, but they give you a nice roadmap to go off of.
Yeah.
So kind of switch to that. We got to Once you publish one clinical practice guideline, the next question is, when are you going to publish the next one?
Right.
All this new literature comes out. So I got to be a part of the second clinical practice guideline on that too.
Nice.
So you have to be able to, shift and pivot a little bit, say yes to opportunities. I would tell people too, when those things come up. Then started thinking more about function and fitness and screening. Got involved. We did a study here at St. Ambrose looking at more of a fitness screen for older adults. The AFIT was what we used, and did some baseline data collection, got patient perception. The plan was to continue it. And then, of course, COVID hit. And that's the turning point we can all talk about, right? And that kind of went away, cycled back around, took this opportunity with APTA Geriatrics to build upon this annual mobility assessment. We'll talk about that later, I know. But also as part of a task force that wrote some guidelines on an annual visit for older adults. So kind of building towards, as you said, this focus on fitness, focus on function to where I am today.
Yeah. And again, you've beautifully provided us with a segue toward the annual mobility assessment, part of APTA Geriatrics. And you've explained nicely how your career positioned you well for this.
Mhm.
You had done a clinical practice guide, you've done some writing, you've done some research. You are used to working with individuals and collaborating on projects of this scale. Let's talk a little bit about the annual mobility assessment, which we will not confuse with the American Medical Association, but we may use the abbreviation, the AMA. Mike, tell us a little bit about what it is and what it means to you at this point.
Yeah. Or confused with against medical advice too. That's the other one.
There is that as well. Yeah.
We've had numerous conversations about that. So taking even a further step back, Mike, I was part of a task force, as I mentioned before, with APTA Geriatrics to build an annual visit with a physical therapist. And we wrote one for geriatrics. And this was a much more holistic type tool, and it's available on the APTA Geriatrics website and APTA website. It's looking at cardiovascular risk factors. It has a movement assessment. It looks at social determinants of health. It looks at all the different aspects of fitness and mobility. This was meant to be kind of a holistic tool that probably takes closer to 45 minutes to an hour to do it well. You and I presented at CSM on the idea of annual visits, and you shared a little bit about how you've done this over the years, and we shared some different models out there. Michelle Lasardi presented at CSM at the Carol Lewis Lecture, which is, as you know, a big lecture at APTA Geriatrics, a combined section meeting. She put a call out to the profession in the academy saying we should be looking at mobility. We should be assessing this. We should be thinking about collecting big data. How can we make an impact for our older adults and detect these early changes and advise them to maintain mobility and throughout their aging process? There was a call for people to help contribute to this, and I stepped forward to do it. And I was asked to lead it. And again, you're talking about how things build. I think all my experience as a director, as a dean, as leading task forces has allowed me to serve this task force well. But we had about 10 or 11 of us together on this task force. And we said, okay, we want to pull together some sort of mobility screen or some sort of mobility assessment. We know the literature's out there. We know these tools detect early changes. We know people who scored lower in these areas are at higher risk for mobility decline. We know if we can get people to be more physically active, work with physical therapists, make some changes, it can have a meaningful impact. So we put together this annual, we called it the screen first, annual mobility screen at first, and said, okay, let's put together these measures. Let's put together a questionnaire that we can get out in the clinic and encourage people to use. The idea is that someone could do this in 20 to 30 minutes. This includes going through the questionnaire, doing the outcome measures, going through the results, and giving some guidance, versus the annual visit, which was a much more longer process, but really just focused on mobility because that's
Yeah.
what we do as physical therapists. Mhm.
Yeah, that's an exceptional summary. Thank you for the succinct summary of what you've offered there to be able to differentiate it from an annual assessment, but truly focused on mobility. And for individuals that are interested in potentially looking at this,
Mhm.
adopting it, learning more, I know there must be some educational opportunities coming forward on that.
Mhm.
We're going to want to link all of those things in the show notes, resources that you would be able to provide so that individuals can sit at a larger
Mhm.
opportunity or a long form opportunity to be able to look at a PDF, etc.
Mhm.
But let's actually take just a moment
Yeah.
to understand what it does for physical therapists. How does it empower us? Does it do anything to advance us toward serving as a primary care
Mhm.
practitioner? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I think if you look at some of the literature out there about views of physical therapists, and I think people, the community, the population really respects us when it comes to injuries, pain, recovery, that sort of thing. We have some work to do when it comes to people viewing us as primary prevention providers, and I think this gives us an opportunity to do that. And there's examples of therapists doing this really, really well. But it's still an uphill battle. We have to kind of reframe ourselves that you can come to us for primary prevention. I think this is what the annual mobility assessment does to open that up. I mean, all your listeners know this, that people don't wake up all one day and lose mobility. This has been going on for 10, 15, 20 years, but no one's measuring it. This is really an opportunity for us to be that person to measure mobility at an early point, track it over time, make recommendations, and prevent falls, prevent loss of mobility, prevent some hospitalizations, all those things like that. Of course, the doctor, he or she measures our blood pressure when we go in. They don't wait till you have a stroke. Your dentist doesn't wait till your teeth fall out to give you a guidance. This
Right.
is a role we can serve and see people on an annual basis, measure those changes, and give them some little guys, a little piece of advice, small nudges, small behavioral changes to adopt a more healthy lifestyle.
Wow. That's very powerful. And it's also interesting. Mike, you and I know that
Mhm.
the profession is at an identity crossroads. We
Mhm.
talk about being movement scientists, we talk
Mhm.
about being mobility experts. And what you're doing here, 20 minutes ago, you
Mhm.
used the phrase fitness forward when you were considering physical therapy. And here we are now in a situation where we're trying to position ourselves into a place that we deserve to be, which is kind of an odd thing because we own the pathophysiology of movement. We can
Mhm.
look at it across orthopedics and degenerative diseases and other neurologic and cardiopulmonary and what actually happens with aging, etc. But I don't think that we're well positioned right now to truly be the movement scientists
Mhm.
that can say, we can identify your warning signs from a mobility standpoint. And with this tool, we can objectify it. And with
Mhm.
this tool, we can inform you about what your blind spots are,
Mhm.
which is
Mhm.
very interesting, Mike, because now we're at this point where you can truly give someone the opportunity to benefit from your knowledge of movement science. So if we were to just describe a little bit
Mhm.
about the overview, I'll tell you what my impression
Mhm.
is, and I want you to fill in the gaps that I don't
Mhm.
treat adequately. So you already mentioned that the Annual mobility assessment has a questionnaire, talks
Mhm.
about activities, exercise, physical activity habits, etc. We have some objective tools that are well known, and you've actually mentioned very quickly, let's say conductable, if you
Mhm.
will, total of 20, 25 minutes or so, four square step test,
Mhm.
timed up and go, cognitive timed up and go, 30-second sit to stand,
Yep. Mhm.
10-meter walk at usual, and 10-meter walk at fast pace.
Correct.
Do I have that rounded out?
Yeah, that's you nailed it there. So you got the gait speeds, you have the 30-second sit to stand, four square step test, and the two tug tests, right? The tug and the tug hog, right? Mhm.
Yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
excellent. And so for people that are not as familiar with what that gives us, whether they're an inexperienced clinician or someone who doesn't operate in
Mhm.
a, let's say, mobility assessment function standpoint, or we're even
Mhm.
talking with someone that's listening that might be a potential consumer that I would
Mhm.
like to raise my hand. What does it actually give the consumer?
Mhm.
To have this assessment, what type of information do you think you can give back?
Yeah, for sure. That's a great question, Mike. So you've hit it, right? So the questionnaire is using the physical activity vital sign. It's using the steady three key questions about unsteadiness, falls, that side of things, worried about falls. It also is asking questions about preclinical mobility limitations, so like small changes in the ability to do things. So I can still climb the stairs, but I've noticed that it takes me a little longer, a little bit more tired. I can still get on the floor, but man, it's really hard. It's been a little bit more difficult to get up.
Yeah.
And then, so we can track those things over time. Um, with the six measures you mentioned, we have put together some normative data. And I would tell you, it's not perfect normative data.
Mhm.
We're going back to the literature. We're doing a systematic review, meta-analyses right now to revisit some of these scores. But we have normative data. You can say, okay, for a 65-year-old male, here is the average gait speed. And this is one standard deviation up, one below. We don't, of course, say standard deviation to the patient, but say, give them a range this way. And we have a nice graphic on a report card, nice color coded bar, and say, you are here on this line. And then that can be very insightful. How am I doing? Well, they might be above that threshold of like 1 meter per second for gait
Mhm.
speed for adverse events, right? But if you're only 65 and you're walking 1 meter per second, that's not a good gait speed, right? The average is going to be significantly higher than that. So,
Mhm.
not just looking at cut scores for adverse events, but how do you compare to other people your same age range? Okay, so that
Mhm.
has value there to show you that. And we all want to know how we measure up to other people, right? That's kind of this internal drive that we have.
Mhm.
Um, the nice thing is the year to year type of thing. So we're doing a research study here at St. Ambrose. I think we had about 64 people in the study to begin with. We measured them at 6 months, and we are just finishing up our 12-month follow up with these individuals. And we're going to continue the study and measure them every year for those who want to continue. But it has been very insightful to be able to show someone like, hey, you have made a significant improvement in your walking speed or your 30-second sit to stand, and they can relate it back and say, yeah, I've been going to the silver sneakers class, or I've been trying to walk a little bit more. And on the flip side too, people who've declined, I mean, just they're still above the average, but they've declined. And they said, yeah, I have not prioritized physical activity. I have been at home. I'm not going out like I should.
Mhm.
And this has been the trigger for them to say, I really should get back to doing some things there. So having that norm data, I think, is vital. It's really important to have that, but then also track that year to year changes and present in an easy form, a graphic, a nice line bar, and or a line graph. You can put a bar on there and say, this is where you at, this is where you are. So that's been very helpful. We found in our research study.
Yeah. Mike, thank you so much. I have so much to say about this, but let
Mhm.
me first say this. Thank you.
Mhm.
Because this is powerful. And what you're telling us with all of this data, and you guys are taking such impeccable care to make certain that the norms are coming from research so that the methodology of how each one of the six measures are done with a degree of fidelity and rigor. And I've been on site and watched
Mhm.
some of this at combined sections
Mhm.
meetings. So I want to make certain that thankless jobs don't go unthanked, number one. So thank you.
Mhm.
This is very important because, as we kind of hinted at about 10 minutes ago, with exception of a very large or catastrophic, with consideration for that term, event, an unexpected trauma, car accident, stroke,
Mhm.
etc., people don't wake up frail.
Mhm.
They become frail. That's one thing. And the other thing is, we tend to still, as a society, believe that aging is this insurmountable boulder that we can do nothing about. And Mike, you're doing something about both of those things. You're giving people a warning sign for pre frailty. Sometimes you're actually letting them know that they are within attributes that could be described as frail. But you're doing two things there. You're saying, we're letting you know, and in what area of fitness, and you can do something about it.
Mhm.
And then I think, I don't want to feel too Pollyannish about this. I feel like you're doing something even larger. That if you look at today's norms of gait speed for a 65-year-old that you referenced 8 minutes or so ago, I just kind of wonder, with the effort that you and your colleagues are doing, if we can start to kind of push those norms a little bit to the right,
Mhm.
uh, have people elevate their expectations with aging. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I mean, I think that can be a motivator, right? It's motivating to know where you stand. If you use activity monitors or sleep sensors or all these things, right? If you can put a number on something and see the progress there, that's important. That would be great to see the norms increase over time. We know the rates of inactivity are really high, unfortunately, in our older adults. But we also know, just if we can take someone from a sedentary point and just add 5-10 minutes of activity to their day, that is so powerful, right? If we can get
Yeah.
them to do 5 minutes of high intensity, like let's climb the stairs a couple times, let's do 10 sit to stands in a row, let's do some lunges, let's do some fast walking. That's where the biggest return in this whole thing is. These people who aren't doing anything, just to get them a little bit more. Now, the person doing 45 minutes a day of exercise, if we add another 10 minutes on them, that's great. But it's not the same return, as you know, from that person going from
Yeah.
0 to 10. And those are the people I really think this could impact. And that's one of the barriers. And I think that's one of the things we need to think about more. The people who are doing really well, they want to come in, they want that pat on the back, and a well-deserved pat on the back, that you are doing awesome, right?
Yeah.
But that person who knows they're not doing well and they're fearful of what's going to happen, those are the people we need to get in, because that's where the biggest return on our investment is. And from
Yeah.
from a public health standpoint, that's the big focus.
Yeah, that's great. You've done an exceptional job putting the frames around what this can do without, uh, being unrealistic with your aspirations. So I
Mhm.
appreciate that.
Yeah.
Um, Talk to us a little bit about, as we wrap up. I want to hear whichever of these questions you would like to address, and if you
Mhm.
feel like you need space to do both, please feel invited.
Mhm.
So here we go, Mike. Whether we're talking about your future research aspirations,
Mhm.
talk to us about that. Or if you'd like to talk to us about your more short term thoughts about how the annual mobility assessment can be rolled out, and what other planned educational opportunities you all have for that, whichever or both, your job. You tell us.
Yeah. Future. Yep. Lots of thoughts, lots of thoughts. So I needed to write
Okay.
something down there real quick to make sure I
Yeah.
could say it. Um, I have told people, I've been on this task force. I think we're coming into our third year of this, and this is truly a passion for myself and the other task force members. Um, when people ask, I tell them I'm not doing all this work to just design another tool that universities go out and do service learning projects with. I mean, I've done that. Those are great things to do. This is really being developed and designed to change how we practice as physical therapists. Like, I want
Mm.
this to change. I want this to be something that people eventually can come in and they can come in and see their physical therapist once a year. It's a reimbursable event, just like they see their doctor, just like to see their dentist. This is what happens. So that's kind of the long-term plan with that. And future research aspirations, I would love, and a colleague, Valerie Lieberts, she's at St. Scholastica. She's doing a lot of work with the mobility checkup, which is very close to the mobility assessment.
Mhm.
We're kind of running parallel with each other, doing a lot of the same work, and she's been a great colleague to talk with and network with. She just recently published a study in PTJ about where she was in a doctor's office doing her annual mobility checkup, which is, again, very similar, after the annual wellness exam in the medical office. I think that has a lot of potential. I talked to someone else who does some of the things in a neurological clinic. I think you could be in a cardiologist's office, but like, how can we actually get with these patients, make it a standardized part of their care? And
Right.
I think there's a work to get people to just come into see the PT clinic, right? You stop
Yeah.
by your PT's office on an annual basis, you do it that way. So I think that's where the emphasis should be at as we move forward with research.
Mhm.
I think with ACOs and managed care, selling our services there, that
Wow.
if we can work with these patients, we can bring down costs. Maybe, let's see what the research
Yeah.
says on that. I think a concern a lot of people have with this annual mobility assessment is that it's just going to be something that brings up costs. It's a trick to get people to come see physical therapists, just to increase
Mm.
our clientele. And if the people who need therapy get therapy, that's great. What we found in our study, only about 20% of people did we recommend they go see a physical therapist. Most of it was go join the senior center, go to the YMCA, do these few exercises. What do you want to do? Let's go for a walk at the mall, that type of thing there. So
Right.
thinking about that sort of thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
One of
That's,
okay.
go ahead.
No, no, you go ahead and I'll follow up with you.
Well, I like where you're headed with that. And I just wonder if you don't also see a role for the annual mobility assessment potentially as an intake tool for individuals as they're entering an active aging community to
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
establish a baseline for where they are and what resources that are on site for
mm-hmm.
that active aging community could potentially be precision based focused for this individual's needs. It's a thought.
Mm-hmm. No, I think that's great. I mean, we look at all these, like you said, communities popping up and centers and not just assisted living, independent living, right? And all those sort of
Yeah.
things there, or just community centers and community sites where people are who are over a certain age are coming together.
Mhm.
Ideally, we do this before they get to the level that they need to move into a center, maybe, or something like this. But I think there's definitely, these are responsive tools. For the most part, they're not going to have a ceiling or a floor effect if we
Right.
work with people at the right times. So I think there really is that potential to, go down to the local senior center, go to the senior living community, and use this as part of an intake form for sure, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, that's excellent. Mike, what would you like to leave us with as we wrap up today? From one Iowa boy to another, uh, what message would you like to share with us? Things that whether they be advice that you would
Mhm.
give, or a salient mantra for you today. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I think I'd like to go back and just say, you mentioned before about learning opportunities and where to get more information. So
Yeah.
the APA Geriatrics website, we have all of the tools there. We've developed a handbook, guidebook about how to run through it, detailed instructions and all the tests, how you talk to patients about these things and work through things. The forms are on there, the intake, the report cards are in there based off of age and gender. So there's a lot of resources out there that are open to everybody. And then we also have a community page if you're an APTA Geriatrics member, where people share things. Like I put all my educational handouts up there. People put pictures of events they've done and just kind of say, how are you handling this? How are you doing this? So there is this virtual community of people out there doing this. Uh, uh, so there's some good role models out there. The other
And
thing we're doing, oh, go ahead.
yeah.
Yep.
No,
Okay.
no, no. I want to hear the other thing you're doing.
Yep.
Go ahead.
Yeah, the other thing we have, we've developed a data repository. So if you are collecting, doing this, either part of a research study or clinical outreach, you can work with our repository, and I oversee that at St. Ambrose. There's some paperwork to fill out, but it's very easy to do. You can then submit your data to this repository, and then we're trying to build big data. So we're working on a paper right now with about 280 data points in it from about 4 or 5 different centers who've done this before. And that gives us that ability to look at things like reliability and relationships that, with my small study of 60 something, I can do some of that stuff. But if we can get 3, 4, 500 data points, it's so much more powerful. And it's a kind of a crowdsourcing way to do some updates and advancement to the AMA.
Yeah. This is so powerful too. And I do want listeners to know we're going to share all of those resources
Mhm,
in the show notes. And I've looked through some of those.
mhm,
These are not just, trivial pieces of information that you guys put out there. You actually, if I recall correctly, and it's
mhm,
been a number of months ago since I saw this, I believe you have a schematic on there about how the test could be physically laid out in
mhm,
a given space so that they make sense and line up in a, let's say, a circuit or a
mhm.
station. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's correct. Michelle Lasardi did a really great job pulling that together. She's run a couple events where they've collected lots of data and said, okay, this worked, this didn't work, this is the way
Yeah.
to do it. Put your clipboards here. It seems so like detail oriented, but those little things, if you've never run an event like that, all these things that are very powerful to help you design a well done event.
Yeah, yeah, that makes it easy and attractive for somebody to adopt that.
Yeah.
Mike, I'm going to ask you an
Okay.
unexpected question, and I know
Yes.
that we were headed toward a close there, and I appreciate your efforts. But I've had an opportunity to work just a little bit with the senior athlete fitness
Hmm.
examination. And I see just a little bit of a corollary here.
Hmm.
Obviously, we are talking about for different purposes, for different settings, but there's some analogies here. If that strikes you as odd, you can certainly disagree with me. What are your thoughts there about the playoff of these two as an annual mobility, maybe community mobility assessment versus am I in shape to participate at a higher level? Do
Hmm.
you have any thoughts about how those two interact or play off of one another?
Oh, I think they line up really well. One of the first people I talked to when we started this task force was Becca Georgie, who's developed the sustained athlete fitness exam, and
That's right.
I've
It's
done
now called sustained athlete
sustained.
because when
Yes,
I was working with her, it was senior athlete
senior.
fitness exam too
Yeah,
many
yeah.
years ago. Yeah.
No, no, that's okay. And we've done it at the I. I've taken students and I've worked with other universities across the state. We've done it at the Iowa Senior Games. And this past year, the national games were in Des Moines. So Becca was
That's right.
there, and I had a chance to get up there and volunteer. Took a handful of students with me there. But yeah, these things run side by side to each other, right? I mean, a lot of the measures you look at cross over. She has a gait speed component. We do. There's a sit to stand component. She gets a little bit more into flexibility, and that makes sense with the senior
Sure.
athlete.
Yeah.
Her balance test is more aggressive than ours, as you would
Mhm.
suspect with these senior
Mhm.
athletes. But
Yeah.
if we could be where Becca is at, I mean, she has an outstanding database of I don't know how many thousands and thousands of athletes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Becca and I talked a lot about this and said, if you could design this, how would you design this? What are your advice? So yeah, we're kind of running on the path that she's helped blaze.
Yeah, thank you. I love where APTA geriatrics is headed. I love where we are working toward redefining what healthy aging actually means and what aging possibilities, remain. And just as a society, from a profession forward standpoint, from, as you said, a fitness forward standpoint, and trying to debunk some of the myths that are obligatory that come with age because it doesn't necessarily have to be.
Mhm.
So, Mike, Dr. Puthoff, I really appreciate your time today. This has been enlightening for me, and I hope that our audience will feel the same. And I'll be certain to share all the show notes and resources that you guys have provided. So, thank you again for your time and expertise.
Thank you, Mike. Enjoyed it.